Since the start of the Me Too movement, I've had several conversations with men about changing societal norms. What's okay to do or say around women, what's not. Some men even say they're fearful of certain situations with the opposite sex. Well, today, as part of our In Focus series, I wanted to address your concerns. So I brought your questions to a panel of men, all working in some way to educate men and boys on domestic and sexual violence. Here's that conversation. I think one of the first things that comes to mind is the compliment. A lot of men say right now they feel like they don't know how to give a compliment or what they can or can't say, or, you know, if the woman is going to feel uncomfortable if they compliment them. So for guys who say that, what would you guys say?
What about compliments worries you? Like, what are you worried is going to happen if you do this? What kind of outcome are you worried about, or what is your goal in the statement that you're making? Which I think is something we should all be asking ourselves before we make complimentary or critical statements of anybody. My gut reaction is always, you could ask women around you how they like to be complimented.
In a working environment, I can say as a woman, I really appreciate it when I get complimented on the work that I'm doing, as opposed to how I appear.
When you say a compliment and she looks at you in a different way, then what do? You know? Did you do something wrong? Or say something wrong?
Yeah, well, and there's that body language aspect of it, right? So if you throw out a compliment, then you can tell the person it's a little uncomfortable, or they don't, you know, there's that weird kind of smile. What would you say to a guy who maybe gets that almost rebuff?
I think if you feel like that you've come to the gray line and you might have jumped the fence and crossed into a boundary that's made somebody uncomfortable, I think you could have that conversation so that you know where those boundaries are next time, and don't make that mistake again.
These are those moments of like taking a second to be apologetic if you need to be, or to better understand why someone might have been offended. And you don't have to agree with them, but I think when I've been offended, I really like it when people check in with me and ask what happened.
Going off what you were saying too, Marty, like the vulnerability aspect that we, I think as men, have to become more comfortable with being in those vulnerable positions, I guess.
Why is vulnerability such a bad word for guys?
Yeah, I guess it shows your weakness. I mean, I like what Marty said about kindness and being kind to people and being respectful, and I think sometimes it's difficult for us men to find those tender parts in us, or maybe we could even say those effeminate parts that we have, and all men have them, and it's just we feel vulnerable when those come out because we're not acting like the rest of our guys that we hang out with.
And when guys hang out together, we've often heard that term locker room talk. And, you know, I've talked with some men who hear locker room talk on a regular basis. Even if it's not happening in front of other women, why is it important to address locker room talk when it's happening?
Sometimes when we become vulnerable in those kind of situations, we want to keep that relationship with those fellows, and it's hard. It's difficult to come out as a bystander and say, hey, you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
You're going to wreck your relationship.
How do we change that narrative for our young men?
I think more education needs to take place, you know, especially in sports, I think, you know.
And that's something that you actually do, have those discussions about fathers and sons. And what do you think that we as a community could do better in terms of having those discussions with our young men?
We need to be role models, and show our young kids, you know, that this is how you treat a woman.
But I also agree, Frank, earlier we were chatting and mentioned that policy changes need to take place, and the legislature needs to be involved in certain ways in how we educate and train, both in our schools, not just in our homes, but in our schools. All of this plays a big role in how we start tackling this in different places and areas. I bet you if we all had conversations about the best and most appropriate way to talk and teach and train young men, we would disagree with each other a lot too.
Sure.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
But what's really happening now is we are not having those conversations, and we're assuming that the conversations are happening.
So what I'm hearing is we should communicate.
Just be yourself, and to treat everybody, including women in your life, with the respect that they deserve. In the office, in the grocery store, wherever you are, if you will always remember to treat them with respect and be kind with them, then I think you'll always stay on the right side of the fence.
Good information there. Now, these men all said that they would love to continue this conversation. To make that happen, we're going to post this story on our website and our Facebook page. We're also going to link these men to that Facebook post so you can contact them directly, maybe send them your questions and comments. And if you're a survivor and you need resources, we are going to post links for different organizations on our website, goodforutah.com.